All right, the thrift savings plan. Hopefully, you're not like me when it comes to the TSP. I did invest, so I did that part right. I put 10% in for a little while, then dropped it to 8%, then upped it to 10%, then put 5% of my paycheck, then 10%. Kind of bounced around. There were a couple years I didn't contribute to the TSP, but for the first 7, maybe 8 years I was in the Marine Corps, it went and sat in the G fund. When I first joined, all your money went in the G fund. Now it all goes to a life cycle fund, which I'll explain why that's better in a minute. But in the G fund, it's like government-backed securities. It's bonds. It has never lost money, but you're not going to earn more than 1, 2, maybe 3% interest. And this was from like 2008 through like 2013, 14, and so maybe 15, 16 actually. And so I'm earning 2 or 3% interest while the rest of the stock market's earning very good returns, right? And so it's just I missed out on a ton of gains, and if I put more of a percentage into my TSP at an early age, I would have been way better off. So the thrift savings plan is awesome, especially if you're on the blended retirement system. If you are on the blended retirement system, if you're not putting 5% into your TSP, you're missing out on a 5% matching contribution. So the government, military will back 1% automatically, will contribute to your TSP, and then up to a 5% match, but you have to put in 5% to get that. So if you're not putting in 5%, you're literally missing out, because if you put in 5% and they put in 5%, it means that every dollar you put in is worth $2. That's an instant 100% return. It also means you're missing out on a 5% pay raise just by not contributing. So I don't want to say you're an idiot if you don't do the 5% match, but you're an idiot if you don't do the 5% match. It's literally free money that the government's giving you that you're never going to see again, right? So at least do 5% matching contribution if you're on the blended retirement system. I would actually say the more you do it at an early age, the better, because it's going to be super valuable. So I have 6 figures in the TSP, but I would easily have 2 or 3 times what I do right now if I had just done the right things or contributed more at an early age. So the Roth side of the TSP IRA world is post-tax, meaning you pay those taxes up front, but you'll never pay the taxes on the back end. And traditional is pre-tax, meaning you don't contribute, you don't pay taxes on the way in, but you will pay taxes when you pull your money out. Personally, I think most service members, Roth is the way to go, because you are most likely in a lower tax bracket now than you will be 40 years from now, depending on if you want to bet the taxes are going to go down in the future instead of up. Not a bet I want to take, but also hopefully you'll be worth a little bit more and you'll make a little bit more money, towards retirement than you are as a PFC, right? So definitely recommend putting your money in Roth. Something to note, your matching contribution will automatically go to traditional. You can't change that, but your contributions you can move to Roth, and I would recommend that for most service members. Got to make your own choice there, and I would say talk to a tax professional, but that's why I say Roth. That's what I recommend. Not a licensed financial advisor, so just a guy who's done a lot of research and a lot of learning and education, right? Definitely get your 5% match. Then choose your fund allocation. So I have a video where I walk through how to do this. It's the one that's titled like, I shouldn't be showing this, or I'm showing too much, or something like that, because I actually show like my TSP and my funds. But just know that, understanding and knowing what funds those go into is complicated, but worth it. So I would recommend reading the book Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. It's a great book that talks about choosing your TSP funds and which ones are good and which ones are bad. And it really talks about index funds in general. So it's not just about the TSP, but it'll help break down this. I recommend it. I'm not going to give you like contribution advice. I personally allocate mine to 75% C and 25% S right now. I've also done like 70% C with 20% S and 10% I before. There's a lot of different variations out there, but you're going to want to do your own research. If you're not going to want to do your own research, like if you don't want to stay on top of funds and which ones you should be in for how old you are and all this other information, definitely recommend just choosing a life cycle fund that ends when you plan to start removing your retirement, right? So if you turn 60 in the year 2060, then put your money in life cycle 2060. Boom, easy. If you turn 60 in the year 2065, then put your money in the life cycle fund 2065. What that does is At an earlier age, it'll be more aggressive, more risky, and then as you get older, it'll gradually move a larger percentage of your portfolio into like the G fund and less risky funds, so that you're less open to like a market downswing towards retirement. So it'll be less risky, but you'll also earn a smaller return most likely. Traditionally, you can earn better outside of the life cycle funds if you know what you're doing, but the life cycle funds are still really good as far as you know, earning that great return, right? So if you're not going to do the work and put in the effort to like maximize and learn about all the funds, I recommend the life cycle fund. You move all your money into there and you just set it and forget it, right? Put in perspective, at 7% interest, which is like the, over the last 50 years, that's kind of what the S&P 500 has averaged. Your money will double every 10 years. So $1 contributed when you're 20 is worth $2 at 30, $4 at 40, $8 when you're 50, and $16 when you're 60, right? So that's why, so put that in perspective. Every $1,000 you contribute in a year when you're 20 is worth $16,000 when you're 60. Or if you maxed it out, I think next year it's gonna be like $20,500. So if you did like $20,000, that would be like, math in public, like $320,000. So like 3 or 4 years of maxing out your TSP when you're, that first 3 or 4 years in the military, which I acknowledge is not easy. But if you max it out for like 4 or 5 years, your retirement would be completely covered. You'd have millions of dollars, or at least $1 million when you went to pull your money when you're 60. You can live off that comfortably. Now, what you can do is you did that sacrifice for 3, 4, 5 years. Now you can afford to take a little bit more risk with your investments, because if they all fail or you go under or whatever, you've still got your retirement taken care of, which I think is huge, because bigger risks at an early age, you can bounce back from them. So you can take a loan from your thrift savings plan up to 50% of the value of your portfolio, or $50,000, whichever is less. So if you have $40,000 in your TSP, you can take out $20,000. If you have $120,000 in your TSP, you can only take out $50,000, right? You pay that loan back at whatever like the G fund average of the last like 12 years is, or 12 months. It's usually going to be like 1 or 2% interest that you have to pay that back, and you're paying the interest back to yourself. So it's not a terrible loan product, but what you're investing in needs to be awesome if you're going to pull out from the TSP. I personally wouldn't take a loan from the TSP except for like an emergency, because let's say you pull money from your TSP, you go buy a house, and that house makes you a 20% return. That's great. And it really is, right? I'm not saying that's bad. But this year I earned 44.29% on my money, I think. It might be like, it's 44 and some change. I think it's 0.29%, but not really a big deal. We'll just say 40%. So if I'd invested that money at 20%, I have to pay back the loan at 2%, but I missed out on 40%. Then really I missed out on 38% because I am paying back 2%, but that means I lost 18% on my money by investing in this, right? So you have to think about things through, it's called opportunity cost, and we'll dig into that a little bit later. But essentially, if you take that money out of the market and it was still earning a return, whatever you do over here isn't costing you 2%. It's costing you whatever that return would have been if you'd left the money in the market. So I'm not a big fan of pulling from your TSP, but you can do it. I would say it has to be a really good investment, and like a sure thing, or like an emergency. And then what to do with your TSP after the military, I think you should just let it ride. There's a lot of things you can do. You can put it in a self-directed IRA and invest in different projects or assets or real estate or whatever. You can move it to another IRA. You could cash it out and just pay penalties on it. Personally, I think you should just let it roll and let it keep compounding. And I use my TSP as like my super duper uber emergency fund. So like if everything goes wrong with my real estate, I have $115,000, whatever it is right now, in this fund that I can pull and throw at my real estate. So it's like my super emergency fund, and it's there to help me out in really rough patches, but I definitely don't recommend doing that. Personally recommend just leaving it in the TSP. I've never taken a dollar out of my TSP, and I don't plan to anytime soon. My biggest regret with TSP is that I didn't contribute more when I was younger, and I didn't allocate my money properly as far as funds earlier, right? If I'd done those two things, My 115 would be $300,000 right now. This year was the first year I really maxed out my TSP, the full like 19.5 plus matching contribution. So it was actually like 21 or 22,000 that I put in. Wish I'd done that before. So that's kind of what I got on that. That's the TSP in a nutshell. I have several videos deep diving into the funds, how to change your allocation, how to change your contributions, how to set all this up. I also have some articles on different TSP strategies, all free. Go check it out. I'll link to some of that stuff in the resources for this, but definitely utilize your TSP. It's very, very, very powerful. And more importantly, it's very simple. People underestimate the value of just having an investment that takes literally no energy to just let it ride. So that's my 2 cents. And next up, we're going to talk about how to build your credit.